And now, from approximately coast to coast, Bob Elliott and Ray Goulding take pleasure in presenting the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
Webley Webster here used to...
I used to play the organ when you were on that radio station there in New York.
Biggest hit was Jealousy, I remember.
Yes, sir. Big studio organ I used to play.
And the longest introduction of any song.
Not many radio stations have a big pipe organ anymore. They just have these little squirt things.
Well, part of
it.
It's the financial thing, and these take up less room. You know, we're doing that. We want to welcome you to this Bob and Ray Public Radio Show, brought to you by our generous subscribers. Einbinder, the greatest name in flypaper. This year, more than ever before, make flypaper an important part of your life.
And, of course, by Monongahela, the metal foundry that casts its ingots with the housewife in mind.
We like to kind of think of ourselves as like a city desk at a newspaper, a place where different correspondents and reporters can submit their stories, and we go through them, pick out the best, and broadcast them.
And there's one type of reporter's assignment that's been an old standby on radio, television, and newspapers. Editors always seem to want the views of the man on the street whenever there's a controversial news development. Now, it's hard to say why we value the wisdom of the common man so highly, but no matter, they do. So here's ace Bob and Ray reporter Wally Ballou.
Lee Ballou seeking the views of some passersby here on the street, views on the latest speech from the White House. Sir, would you step over here and talk to me, please?
You want to talk to me?
Yes, I would like to. Did you hear the president's speech about the economy?
Well, more or less. I was trimming the cat's toenails, but the TV was on in the other room. I could hear somebody talking, and the voice sounded familiar.
It was the president, huh?
Yeah, I recognize his voice from the other room.
Well, now, we're getting the reaction of people like yourself to his address. For instance, the point about declining productivity being a major cause of inflation.
Well, sure. Now, you take the laundromat on the corner. Now, their dryers used to give me 10 minutes for a dime. Now it's up to 15 cents, but they only run for 8 minutes.
Right. Could you step over here where we don't get quite so much traffic noise? When the president spoke of productivity...
Well, I understood him perfectly, and I agree. Now, you take the elastic in my shorts. It never gets dry in 8 minutes, so I'm stuck for an extra 15 cents, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Now, the president also talked about cutting back foreign imports.
Well, look, let me finish my thought on this productivity thing. See, my sister-in-law owns one of those donut shops where they got a machine in the window that makes the donuts.
Well, I'm sure your sister-in-law has her problems with the economy, too, but what
She's got no problems. I've got problems. I work there. I sprinkle the chocolate sprinkles on the donuts as they go by, see?
Well, I know. We were talking about things like Japanese automobiles.
Well, look, what I'm telling you is that my sister-in-law speeded up the machine last week, and I still get paid the same, you know? Now, is this justice?
No, I suppose not, but does that mean you agree or disagree with the president about declining productivity causing inflation?
Well, let me put it this way. In our parents' time, should a man like me, who's at the peak of his earning power, have to go around with damp elastic in his shorts?
Did you say you heard the speech or not?
Well, part of it from the other room. My TV's in the kitchen. But like I say, I was trimming the cat's toenails, and you don't want toenails flying around the kitchen.
No,
you
don't. And I appreciate getting your thoughtful insight on the president's address, and this is Wally Ballou sending it back to our main studio.
Thank you, Wally. I would like to welcome a new subscriber to our program, too, making their first appearance on radio.
Hi, this is Rudolph.
And Irma.
Of the Rudolph and Irma Dance Studios. And if you have a dollar bill...
Any dollar bill...
that's green...
it entitles you to one free dance lesson at
Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios, located at 5913 Harper Street in Auburn, Long Island.
And if you don't have a dollar bill...
any Lincoln Head penny will do.
And if you don't happen to be one of the lucky holders of a Lincoln Head penny...
you can show us an empty change purse.
Or an empty wallet.
And still get a free dance lesson, provided you give us a verbal statement of intent that you plan to buy a wallet.
Or a change purse. And that address again is...
Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios, 5913 Harper Street,
Auburn, Long Island.
Where you learn the breakaway fade, popularized by Henry Armstead. Wizard of the Waxed Floors.
Or perhaps you'll be taken by the concamonga, a combination of the conga
And the manga, as taught by Perry Sanchez, the hero of the hardboards, at
Rudolph
and
and
Irma's
Irma's
Dance Studios in Arverne, Long Island.
And for you older folk who prefer a less lively dance step, chat with us about learning the creek.
A mild dance step made well known by that septuagenarian of slide, Amos Neezer.
And of course, there are the more popular steps you can learn.
Like the jockey trot,
Or the hot coal hop.
and of course, the very much in vogue cocktail dip.
As taught by Felicia Floodgate, the siren of the surfaces,
All this at
Rudolph
and
and
Irma's
Irma's
Dance
Dance
Studios in Arverne, Long Island.
where you'll find dancing a pleasure
On our deep pile rugs.
in tastefully furnished offices,
And don't forget to ask about our colored rotating chandelier.
which throws a myriad of multicolored lights on each dancing student.
And for those of you who care for music while you're dancing, arrangements can be made for melodies to be played.
So be sure to ask about the chalk footprint method of dancing.
With footprints skillfully drawn by Lionel Warp, the Titan of Taps.
All this at
Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios, 5913 Harper Street.
Arverne, Long Island.
And will the soft shoe dancer who left his soft shoes at the studio please pick them up this week?
Before they melt completely. Oh, I'm sorry, Rudolph.
No, that's all right.
Did you want to say that together with me?
Well, that's all right.
Togetherness is so important, though.
Yeah, especially in the dance business.
That's right. Well, now we're in for another nostalgic interlude as we welcome Ralph Flinger to our microphone. Ralph is better known to most of you as Mr. I Know Where They Are. Now, he spent a lifetime tracking down old-time celebrities who are no longer in the spotlight. And Ralph, it's amazing how many of our listeners write in asking your help as they try to locate their favorites of days gone by.
Well, I'm delighted to do whatever I can to help, Ray. You know, I send out more than 100 birthday cards on the average day to washed-up celebrities who've grown a year older. And I know it makes them feel better when I can include a little note that tells them they're still remembered by your listeners.
Well, they certainly are remembered, I'm sure, Ralph. This letter I have here is from a woman in Oregon, is typical of those that come in addressed to Mr. I Know Where They Are. She says that her girlhood hero was a rich society playboy named Wainbridge Van Cortlandt. But she hasn't read anything about him now in the paper for years, and she wonders whatever became of him.
Oh, goodness sakes alive. Wainbridge Van Cortlandt. His grandfather made millions selling defective railroad ties back in the 19th century when the Iron Horse was first spanning the country.
And tying it together into one great nation, you mean?
Yes, except on the lines where old man Van Cortlandt had provided the railroad ties. The wood in most of them was infested with termites, so that caused the locomotives to tip over before they had a chance to tie this country together into one great nation.
I see. But, of course, Wainbridge Van Cortlandt wasn't responsible for any of that.
No. That swindle of his grandfather's happened long before his time. About the worst thing Wainbridge ever did was ride down Wall Street during the Depression on one of his polo ponies.
Uh-oh.
Several former stockbrokers were kicked as they stood on the sidewalk trying to sell apples.
Yeah.
But later, Wainbridge gave them each $1 to show that it was nothing personal.
Well, it sounds as if the man was a decent sort of a fellow that any young girl might have worshipped from afar. But where is he now?
Well, Wainbridge lost everything during the war, Ray. He'd invested the family fortune in buying a South Pacific island, but the Japanese managed to sink it some way. I think they just let the air out underneath it and it fell. Anyway, Wainbridge now lives in a small furnished room across the street from the bus station in St. Louis. He supports himself by raising goldfish and selling them to his neighbors.
Well, that's quite a come down for a millionaire playboy, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
But at least you've answered the lady's question. Our next letter, addressed to Mr. I Know Where They Are, is from a man in Utah. He remembers a famous rodeo rider of years ago named Tumbleweed Gargan. And he wonders if you happen to know where Tumbleweed is.
Well, indeed, I do know where Tumbleweed Gargan is. I think he was a hero of every young fellow who grew up in the West, Ray. He used to rope wild bison before that rodeo event was outlawed by most state legislatures.
Well, that's very interesting. Where's Tumbleweed now?
Well, I don't think they ever officially outlawed bison roping in Montana, but since the event had been dropped from rodeos in other states, it gradually died out there, too.
I see. Well, what about Tumbleweed Gargan?
A lot of people claim that bison roping constituted cruelty to animals. I don't know why they still have calf roping in rodeos, and calves are similar to bison, except that they're not as woolly.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Where is Tumbleweed Gargan now?
He's in Fort Worth, Texas.
Well, is that all?
Yes, as far as I know.
Well, I guess that takes care of that. I think we have time, looking at the clock here, for one more quick question addressed to Mr. I Know Where They Are. It's from a woman in Virginia, and she's wondering about a former child movie star named Fat Baby Moxford. She thinks he was a member of the group that called themselves the Little Cut-Ups.
Oh, yes. Not people remember that. Not many people do, but Fat Baby Moxford was one of the original Little Cut-Ups. He was later replaced, I believe, by Pinky Luling. Studio had to drop Fat Baby around 1927 because he stopped being a baby, even though he did manage to remain fat.
Well, that should give the listener who wrote in a lot of good background information. But what she really wanted to know is what became of Fat Baby Moxford.
Well, he's now the president of a large corporation in Palo Alto, California that deals in computer software, Ray. And I think that's really quite a tribute to his ability. Imagine it's quite difficult for a middle-aged man to get to the top in the business world when his name is Fat Baby Moxford.
Yes. I'm sure he'd have to put forth extra effort to prove that he had what it took, particularly in computer software. So just let me thank you for answering the lady's question, and also those of our other listeners.
Oh, I was delighted to do it, Ray. Chatting about all these old people helps keep me young. Goodbye.
Bye. Say, friends, have you checked your household flypaper lately to make sure it's retaining its full stickum quality? Even the finest brands tend to dry out after hanging indoors for a few years.
Hi, this is Bob and Ray reminding you that dry flypaper is a useless weapon in your battle against swarming insects. So replace your old dead flypaper today with Einbinders, the brand you've gradually grown to trust over the course of 3 generations. Now we should have a little sports talk. We haven't done that for quite a while.
A little sports music.
Hi, sports fans. This is Biff Burns in the sports room, and today we're welcoming a great hero of the game of baseball, a fellow who's had some 29 years in the sport. He's finally retiring, and I speak, of course, of Stuffy Hodgson. Stuffy, welcome to the sports room. How do you feel?
Well, I feel pretty sad, naturally, Biff, realizing that this is the last day. Pretty sad.
Well, that's a pretty normal way to feel, but still in all, looking back over this long career of yours, you got to admit the game has been pretty good to you.
Well, not as good to me as some of these young punks that are coming along.
Well, I detect a note of rancor there. What do you mean exactly?
Well, when I first come up to the big leagues, playing the game was everything. Sure, you got paid for it, but now all these young guys think about it. Big salaries, and big homes, and big cars, and vintage wine, and beautiful women, and making TV commercials, and sleeping late in the morning.
Looks like guys like you went wrong somewhere along the line.
I know, and these young guys, they all have these little radios going in the locker room all the time, playing a bunch of noise. Now, I don't understand that kind of music. Whatever happened to the songs that Pat Boone and Kate Smith sang? I mean, those guys sang real songs.
I guess so. I don't know much about music.
And here they're always kidding around. Now, they loosen the spikes on my shoes, you know. So I run wobbly.
Oh, that's right.
And they put cheese up here in the band of my cap.
Wow.
It took me till August to track that smell down.
That's really
I heard the
terrible.
other day they dumped a pail of water on me and the sports writer back there. Well, you know, I like a joke like the next guy, but you go too far.
Yeah, I think I read something about that. You know, looking back, it's good to see that after all of these years and the ups and downs, you've managed to retain your sense of humor. I think
You got it.
I know that you're one of the most important speakers on the sports banquet circuit. I guess you could go out and appear at those things 5-6 nights a week if you wanted to. Give us one of the stories that you tell at those affairs that
Sure.
go over so well.
Well, when I first came up to the big leagues, I was just a kid, of course. And my first time at bat, I'll never forget. They had the big guy out in the mound, the big left-hander. Do you remember him?
I remember him well.
Well, he was throwing real smoke that day. I couldn't see the ball. And the umpire behind the plate was a great big guy. Do you remember him?
No, I don't remember.
Well, anyway, the third strike goes by me, and the umpire says, "You're out." So I was nervous, and it was the first time up. I took my bat, and I threw it straight up in the air. And the umpire took off his mask, and he came over to me, he says, "Young man," I was a young man then, he says, "Young man, if that bat comes down, you're out of the game." That's the anecdote.
Yeah. No wonder you're so much in demand at those groups. You know, I know that you also developed a reputation for not looking after what you ate or drank or how much. Still in all, you seem to be in pretty good physical condition. How do you account for that stuff?
Well, I wouldn't buy any stock in what you just said.
You wouldn't?
No, the worst thing to happen in this game is this artificial turf. You know, it's like playing the game on a billiard table. You're back there to make a play, the ball takes these crazy hops, jumps up and hits you here in the clavicle. No, you got to dig in and play it. If you're going to win this game, you got to dig in, you got to make that play. And that goes for both teams, irreversible.
Stuffy, do you think now they're going to retire your number?
No, they got some young punk wearing it out there now.
Well, I see the mayor and Whitey Ford and George Burns coming
Where?
into the
Oh, yeah.
dugout for the retirement ceremony, so I'll just say thanks a lot and wish you a lot of luck. And this is Biff Burns in the sports room saying until next time, this is Biff Burns saying so long. Today, we announce Bob and Ray final clearance, a closeout, absolute clearance sale.
We are being forced, to vacate our premises. Our lease has been foreclosed.
Our landlord says we must go, and his ultimatum is your good luck.
Now, we have to get rid of every last piece of our tremendous stock at ridiculous sacrifice.
Now, because we must go, you can buy men's two-pants suits for $16.50. Men's three-pants suits for $17.50. And men's four-pants suits for $18.59.
And men's all-pants suits for $19.50. Now, you can get men's complete winter overcoats at $22.50 and men's winter overcoats without sleeves for $17.50.
Our lease is up, and you get the benefit. Men's winter underwear with long legs and long sleeves for $1.75. An extra pair of legs for only 38 cents.
Yes, the landlord says vacate, and that's it. What? Excuse me.
Us?
Hello? Yes. What? We can? Darn it.
What's the matter?
The landlord says we can stay another year.
And welcome now to The Big Scoop, the program that pays tribute to the outstanding accomplishments of the nation's working newspapermen. And here at our news desk, prepared to tell you about this week's Big Scoop Award, is our Big Scoop editor, Big Fred Scoop.
Thank you, Norman, and welcome to the Big Scoop. Now, this week's handsome award, suitable for framing, together with a certified check for $15, goes to Millard L. Peavy, the crime reporter for the Kenosha, Wisconsin Star-Tribune and Morning Throwaway. It was only a little more than a year ago, on March 14th, 1981, that Millard Peavy's career took a sudden turn when he was called into the office of his managing editor.
Peavy, I've been wanting to speak to you personally because I plan to clean out some dead wood around this office. Naturally, you'll be the first to get the old heave-ho. Unless you can explain what you've been doing the past few weeks. You haven't written a story for this paper since you covered the Eastern Star rummage sale on Lincoln's birthday. What have you been goofing off over since then?
Well, actually, Chief, I've been working night and day on the story that could become my big scoop. You remember Big Daddy Gumbert? The guy who was sentenced to life in 1971 for hijacking a truckload of peach cobbler and killing the driver? Well, I'm convinced he didn't do it, Chief. And I'm out to prove that an innocent man is rotting in prison.
Well, I can't believe you're serious, Peavy. I remember the Gumbert case very well. The police found bits of stewed peaches on his shoes. Besides that, he dropped his driver's license and 5 credit cards in the cab of the hijacked truck when he abandoned it. His trial only lasted a half hour before he was found guilty.
Well, that was only because he signed a full confession, Chief. But I know that he had to be shielding the real criminal. Too many things don't add up. I intend to get to the bottom of this.
All right, Peavy. Follow up your hunch if you want to, but if you're wrong and disgrace this newspaper, you're finished here at the Kenosha, Wisconsin Star-Tribune and Morning Throwaway.
Well, I understand, Chief. And as a working journalist, I'm honor bound to see that the guilty are punished and the innocent are set free. I'll put my career and my future on the line for that if I must.
And so Millard Peavy began the difficult job of searching for new evidence about a crime that had occurred 10 years before. First, he sought out the medical man who headed the local police crime lab.
Say, Doc, I'm convinced that someone ordered you to say that peach cobbler was found on the suspect's shoes, not to mention his fingerprints being found on the murder gun. Would you care to comment on why you committed perjury at the trial?
You miserable wretch. Next, Peavy chatted with the retired police chief, who had been in charge of the force at the time of the Gumbert case.
Hey, Chief, it strikes me as quite a coincidence that you suddenly found you had enough money to retire only 4 years after Big Daddy Gumbert was put away for a murder he didn't commit. How about filling in the missing pieces for me?
Why, you rotten little punk. Finally, Peavy went to the man who had been the prosecuting attorney in the Gumbert case and had since gone on to become governor of the state.
Say, Governor, I'm sure that you know your political career will be finished once I break the story on your crooked double-crossing background. Why not tell me all about it? Maybe I can go easy on you.
You reprehensible pipsqueak. Armed with the facts, Millard Peavy returned to face his editor.
Sorry it took a few months longer than I expected, Chief, but you run into a lot of dead ends digging into a story like this. After all these years, the people involved were still determined to protect each other, and it takes a long time to chip away the alibi.
I understand, Peavy, but it was well worth the time if this paper can break the story that Big Daddy Gumbert is in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Well, I'm afraid you'd better not run a story like that, Chief. This one I just wrote is safer. It's got all the documented facts in it to prove that Gumbert was guilty as sin. Now, I don't know why I ever thought he might be innocent, but at least I can save you the trouble of firing me. Here's my concisely written letter of resignation. I've done my duty as a journalist, and now I'm finished.
And so it was that Millard Peavy capped his long journalistic career with a fine job of investigative reporting that proved how our criminal courts had convicted a guilty man. Peavy now operates a shoeshine stand in the Kenosha bus depot. But at heart, he's still a newspaperman, and one whose story we've been privileged to tell here on The Big Scoop.
Welcome once again to Garish Summit and its continuing story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. Now, as this week's action begins, young Rodney Murchfield is counting paper clips in his palatial office at the Murchfield Lead Mining Company. And suddenly, his evil brother Caldwell enters. Rodney speaks.
527, 528, 529.
I don't know whether you've heard about it yet, Rodney, but Mother just made me vice president of the family business. Where shall I put my golf clubs?
I really don't care. And I might add, the very idea of your being an officer of this firm fills me with disgust. 548, 549.
Well, I'm not too crazy about having you here either, but since you're president of the outfit, I'll try to make the best of it.
You're missing the point, Caldwell. My whole life has been dedicated to Birchfield lead mining. Lead is in my blood. Now you've suddenly appeared as my long-lost brother, and I don't see that 30 years of being long-lost qualifies you for an executive position.
Excuse me, would either of you care for some coffee?
Not now, Pamela. I'm in conference and can't be disturbed.
Yes, sir.
586, 587, 580.
Gee, I hope she comes back. I sure would have liked some coffee. Besides, I could tell she was giving me the big eye.
Caldwell, that young lady's in love with me, and I'm planning to leave my wife to marry her. It's scheduled for next Thursday, I believe. I have it here in my appointment pad somewhere.
Well, look, while you're looking for that, I'll outline my plans for changing our company's product line now that I'm a big cheese here.
Don't talk nonsense. We can't change the product line. This is a lead mining company. Our only product is lead.
Excuse me. If you're too busy for coffee, does that mean you want me to hold your calls too?
Yes, by all means, Pamela. Hold my calls.
Yes, sir. You haven't had any so far today, but if one comes in, I'll hold it.
Frankly, Caldwell, I can't imagine why you'd suggest changing the firm's product line when this is only your first day on the job.
Well, a business only sells lead ingots, just doesn't have much pizzazz. Besides, I saw a couple of our salesmen in the parking lot. Poor guys couldn't even lift their sample cases.
Well, your compassion for the hired help is very touching, Caldwell, but if the men don't like it here, they can look for work in another state where we Birchfields don't control the economy.
Excuse me, but since you're in conference, I thought this might be a good time for me to go to lunch.
Yes, go to lunch, Pamela, by all means.
Thank you. I thought it might be a good idea to do that.
It's hard to branch out from lead, Caldwell.
Gee, I was hoping maybe she'd go to lunch with me, but you sure put the kibosh on that.
Pamela's my fiancée, Caldwell. I already told you that.
Well, I plan to muscle in on you, but I guess I can wait.
Fine. Then let me complete my thought. We've made previous attempts to broaden the Birchfield product line with toy soldiers, fishing sinkers, all that sort of thing. In fact, we once adopted a new company motto: if it's heavy as lead, Birchfield makes it.
Well, that's been your whole trouble, you see. You can't see beyond lead. I've taken steps to get us into the big money. Thanks to my efforts, there'll soon be a gambling casino operating on this very spot.
What in heaven's name are you talking about?
Birchfield Lead has taken in a new partner, Rodney. I've settled an old personal debt by merging us with Big Auto from Detroit.
I hope you're only joking, Caldwell. Before I'd allow a thing like that to happen, I'd strangle you with my bare hands. 617, 618, 600...
Well, can organized criminals fit in comfortably with the socially prominent Birchfields? And what about Pamela's mysterious failure to return from lunch? Perhaps we'll learn more next week when we hear Rodney say,
"Now that I've signed the merger agreement, is it all right for me to take my feet out of the wet cement, Otto?"
That's next week, when we resume our story of endless intrigue on Garish Summit.
Say, here's good news for you homemakers. You're well aware, I'm sure, that extra shiny steel ingots have been in short supply this season at your Monongahela Metal Foundry showroom. But now we're happy to say that supply has nearly caught up with the tremendous demand.
You may still encounter a limit of 3 ingots to the customer in some scattered areas. But in most places, your Monongahela agent will be happy to sell you as many as you need to replace those old worn-out ingots you've been forced to use during the shortage. So stock up today while there's a good selection.
Well, with that, hardly seems possible. I think time is just about up for this one, huh?
Yeah, it looks like it has. We got to go. We should remind you all, though, that the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show was developed and produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who has known the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And he can't decide which he likes best.
The associate producer is Marjorie Van Halderen. who's had it up to here with Frank Sinatra records.
And Mr. Music is Stan Free. Audio engineer Mike Moran.
Funding in part from the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York State Council on the Arts.
Now, this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumbs.
This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.